Thank you all for being here. We appreciate your support and your excitement. Having been here at the beginning with Joshua 8 years ago, I could have never imagined this room. It is humbling to be in front of you and very excited to have the opportunity to spend some time with you. I'd also like to take a minute and congratulate, many of you may not have known this, but last week, internally and externally, we announced that Tiago Henriques is Coalition's new Chief Underwriting Officer. So congratulations to Tiago. Lots of exciting things happening at Coalition. But the one thing I want to start off with is you. Thank you for being here. We appreciate your support. The last 8 years have been an absolute ride, and we could not have done this without you. In this room today represents a fraction of Coalition's premium overall, but it represents $465 million of cyber premium in this room today. This is a powerful audience. We know that. I hope you know that. Our ability to influence the world's most pervasive risk in society today, cyber, is found in this room. And we're excited that you would spend the day with us to better understand how we can do that together. Now, what I want to do is build a little bit on Joshua's comments. Joshua highlighted this idea around how we can thrive in the digital future. And what can cyber insurers do to pull this off in a meaningful way and really contribute to this risk we call cyber? So there's 4 things we believe that cyber insurance companies need to do. And I'd like to go through these 4 pillars today with a bit of data. As we think about this, traditional insurers, they aren't really skilled at evaluating cyber risk. Cyber risk is very different. Stochastic modeling techniques that are utilized in property and casualty, in D&O, and other areas of risk don't really work in cyber. Cyber's too dynamic. It's too interrelated. The interconnectedness of cyber makes this really challenging. And so in order to do this in a really traditional fashion, it's challenging. And as a result, everyone suffers. We put the client in this position where they have to fill out long applications. This is dramatic misunderstanding of the risk. I actually remember as a broker having a carrier ask to do a call with my client. And I want to evaluate their cyber risk. So I get the CISO. This is a very notable company that everyone in this room would know. I get the CISO on the phone with the carrier. The carrier's excited. The CISO's excited. And when the call ends, by the way, it was like an 8-minute call, the CISO slams the phone. He's like, that was a waste of time. Can you imagine the feeling as a broker when your client tells you this was a waste of time? And I was like, man, I'm really sorry. And he's like, I just don't understand how they could have understood my cyber risk on that call. Like, the questions didn't make sense. It didn't drive the concerns that I have as a CISO of this organization. It's really challenging to have those experiences with clients. In addition, kind of the nature of traditional insurance oftentimes put you, the broker, in a difficult position as well. You have to suffer through inaccurate quoting, inefficiency in pricing, policy language that doesn't really meet the needs of the client. And then finally, the carrier struggles as well. You have the most notable one I'll mention is the friction in renewals. So our belief that we'd like to highlight, the first belief that we'd like to address, is the notion that in order for a cyber insurer to truly excel in a digitized future, is we have to have the ability to enhance a client's understanding of cyber risk, right? And we see that across many areas of insurance, right? It's widely known kind of what's needed in order to protect a building from a natural catastrophe, right? That understanding in cyber has, frankly, think about the last few years, has evolved tremendously. Cyber insurers need to play a role in enhancing a client's understanding of their risk. Now, the foundation of this, from our perspective initially, is data, right? When you have the right data, it provides you this foundation of knowledge, and the value is then provided in tremendous fashion to the policyholder, right? To you, the broker. This data provides accuracy in pricing. It makes it easier, faster to quote and bind with speed. And then finally, it reduces the need to remarket because you have the product in place that can meet the needs of the client. When you have the data, you can provide material value to your client. Now, we applaud the industry's efforts to incorporate what's widely known as scanning data to improve underwriting, right? The nuance of coalition is rather than purchasing data from third parties in order to better understand cyber risk, coalition is the root collector of data. Over 2 million data signals are collected, 2 trillion data signals are collected by Coalition every month, right? This is data that Coalition owns. This is our ability to use that data as unfettered. We can use it in any fashion we desire, and we do. We provide you a Coalition risk assessment of every submission you provide to Coalition. Not every account you bind. We do that at the submission stage because we want to put you in a position where you have the data readily available in order to enable you to help your client better understand their risk, right? Many of you have had the experience of a client saying, wait a second, if my insurance company knows this, what do the adversaries know, right? We put the tools in your hand as a strong sales enablement tool. We're going to talk a lot more about the data we provide to your clients in the form of coalition control. Actually, rather than me talk about it, Tiago, how about we show them?
Let's do this. Cool. So what I'm showing you on screen is our internal system for underwriting. This is what an underwriter sees. And you all heard Joshua mention before a knowledge graph. So let's start there. I'm going to press the graph button. What is a knowledge graph? You can think of a knowledge graph as like a brain. It holds all the knowledge at a point in time that Coalition has about a company. And typically, if you work with other people that do cyber insurance, this is scans for IPs and domains, but not for us at Coalition. For us at Coalition, it means a lot more. If I zoom in, every single one of these dots is an asset related to this company. And if I press graph summary here, you can see that just for this company, we have a lot of different types of assets. We have subdomains, we have data leaks, technologies, we have employees. Who are the people that work at the company? What are their titles? Why? Because the size of the InfoSec team matters, the size of the executive team matters. These are all signals we use in our underwriting process. But it can also get quite overwhelming. If I zoom out, you can see that there are a lot of dots in this graph. And for a human, this can get really complicated. So we had to get to a place where we started mixing data with AI. And this is what it looks like. So as an example, we're looking at a demo account here, Allied Benefits System LLC. And I would just like to zoom in here as an example. And you'll see that it says account domains 1, security domains 2. And the reason for this is because when we received the application, it actually only came with one domain. Let me zoom out. It only came with alliedbenefit.com. But when this domain is fed into our system, we have AI agents that automatically go and enrich all the information around this domain. And one of the things that one of our AI agents found, for some reason, is this medzoom.com domain. So why did that happen? And it's because Allied Benefit Systems had acquired a subsidiary, a new company called MedZoom. And automatically, the system pulls that domain into the account so that we account for scanning with this new domain. Why? Because we've learned that as companies buy other companies or have subsidiaries or partnerships, they intermingle the digital infrastructure. And often we've seen situations where the main company is actually in a secure state, the subsidiary is not, hackers will compromise the subsidiary and then pivot into the main company because of the shared digital infrastructure. So the system handles this automatically. Cool. What else does it do? I'll point here to the top right-hand corner. You'll see that special activities is in red. So if I click on it, we can see that it triggered our machine learning classifier for industries, and it says there's a high probability that this company is a payment processor. The interesting thing is this actually comes from the subsidiary. If we go on their website, and if we scroll down, MedZoom handles payments. And this is one of the industries that Coalition considers a potentially risky industry. It affects our pricing, it affects how we think about the risk. And again, this handle is all automatically for the underwriter. He doesn't need to go browse websites, he doesn't need to go browse Google. All of this is done automatically for him. Joshua also mentioned that we often know more about a company's risk than they do themselves. And as an example, if I scroll down, you'll see here at the bottom, we have a bunch of critical vulnerabilities that we found. So I'm going to go into Insights, and I'm going to pick Findings, and I'm going to pick credentials stolen via a compromised device. And any underwriter collision can come in here and immediately get educated on what this means from a security perspective. They don't need to wait for a security engineer to be available. They don't need any of that. We always provide a description, what are the security recommendations, and we provide all the technical data to understand which machine was infected and which specific user, and I'll scroll down here for a second, we can see the specific user that had their machine infected and data being stolen. And immediately, the underwriter can start working with our broker partner and the client to get this remediated. As I mentioned before, we look at a lot of other different types of data. We look at people to understand what is the composition of technical teams at the company, the executive team, the finance team, because all of these are important data points. We've started to get signal that when a company is in financial distress, for example, the security team is actually one of the first to go. So that's why we use all of these data points in our underwriting. We also have something pretty interesting where we look at technologies. And you can see here that I'm assigning certain technologies to certain subdomains that are being used. And if I scroll a little bit and I go into page 2, you'll start to see that some are getting tagged with what is called honeypot pressure. Cyber is an incredibly fast industry. One day, a company might be secure. The next day, a vulnerability comes out, and attackers start to scan the internet to try and compromise companies with that vulnerability. So what do we do to try and understand this behavior? Coalition doesn't just scan the internet. We actually use what are called honeypots. We put machines on the internet that pretend to be our policyholders, pretend to be their technology stack, pretend to be their website, and we sit back and we watch as attackers attack those fake computers. And that gives us an idea of the type of technologies that they're targeting. And immediately we can then contact all of our policyholders that are using that technology and tell them, hey, you need to patch this technology to the latest version available, or if possible, take it off of the internet, because we're starting to see people looking for companies that use this technology to potentially deploy ransomware. But again, the underwriter has immediate real-time access to all of this data. What are the specific technologies at this company that we're seeing honeypot pressure for? Shawn, back to you.
Thank you. I love the concept of the honey pot, right? You put a pot of honey out, right? And you wait for the bears to come. So I'm not sure if you saw that, but in the honey pot, just in the last 30 days, 9.7 billion times, adversaries attempted to address and connect to our honey pot, right? And when they attempt to infiltrate a honeypot, there's nothing behind that. There's no actual honey, right? There's no assets, no revenue. It gives us insight, meaningful understanding around what technologies are being exploited and how we can help your policyholders, your clients, avoid a claim, right? Now, we all know that the notion of data is really useful for cyber as respects to security, and hopefully we've demonstrated that to a bit. But we also know that cyber-related risk, and particularly the cyber insurance policy, does a lot more than just protect around cybersecurity. Media is covered, right? Privacy is covered. And we know the concern around wrongful collection today. So we incorporated privacy-related risks into our active data graph. And we'd love to show you that as well. Tiago.
Cool. So one of the things we noticed that our underwriters were spending a lot of time on is for any new domain that we would detect automatically in the system, they would have to go find the terms and conditions and data privacy policy for every single one of those and see if there were any red herrings there. So we've decided to automate a portion of that as well to help them out. So if I go into privacy policies, you'll see that the alliedbenefit.com domain is here. And if I click on it, automatically I can check for a bunch of different conditions that, depending on where the company is based, it will tell the underwriter whether there is some type of red flag or whether they're passing that control as well. Again, this is all done automatically the moment we start enriching around that domain. If we find other domains that have terms and conditions that differ from the base, all of this handled automatically by our system and our AI agents as well. As I mentioned before, all of these things live in the graph. I can always press that button, and the privacy policy is a dot in the graph. Absolutely everything lives in this mini brain that we build for every single company that we're underwriting. The other thing that's interesting as well is these mini brains aren't static. Every single company that Coalition sees, whether we bind it or not, continuously, every single month we enrich this graph with new information so that we can keep track of which companies are getting ransomed, which ones are not. Shawn?
I love that. The data is not standing still. We're constantly collecting more data, and we're constantly attempting to provide more value with that data to you. When we think about the notion of privacy policy, or privacy-related risks, and certainly wrongful collection, we found ourselves in many situations, I'm sure you have, where it's like, what's the underwriter doing? Like, how is this even being assessed? And although we can provide full limits for wrongful collection, hopefully you understand the sustainability of those limits because we're truly underwriting it, right? Now, we look at all this data, right? And I know we talked a lot about underwriting. How does this apply to you, right? What does this data do for you as the broker? And I'd like to take us back to 2023 in the month of February. We received a submission for a relatively, right, unknown company at the time known as Change Healthcare, right? Interesting submission, right? Pretty straightforward. We looked at the submission and we found something that was really interesting, again, in 2023, right? 2 years ago, which was a Citrix portal that did not have MFA. Now, the Citrix portal was important, right? And we recognized as we saw it, and we saw that there was an ability for an adversary to use compromised credentials and access the portal inappropriately, right? And because it was visible to us, because there was no MFA deployed, no VPN, anything of that nature, we applied a contingency on that specific account, stating that our quote was valid so long as Change Healthcare kind of fixed this particular matter, right? And enabled MFA, right? Now, this is interesting, right? Hindsight's 2020, because when you fast forward to February of 2024, one of the largest cyber events in US history occurred. Many of us know what happened, right? The ransomware threat group Black Cat infiltrated the company. And it resulted not only in ransomware, but about 2/3 of pharmacies around the United States, as well as many other medical facilities who went down, who couldn't process payments, couldn't process prescriptions, et cetera, et cetera. It actually led to the largest breach of medical data in US history, over 190 million records, right? United Healthcare Group ended up actually advancing over $6 billion in funds to effective healthcare providers. Now, what's interesting about this is the following May, just a few months later, the CEO, due to the impact, was actually called to testify before the United States Senate. And here is a portion of his testimony. What you will notice in his comments, he said that on February 12th, just a couple weeks after we received the submission, compromised credentials for a specific Change Healthcare Citrix portal were compromised. They were able to use the compromised credentials to access the portal because they did not have MFA. I know in the softest of markets in cyber, right, receiving a contingency is not always the easiest thing to receive, right? And we know that, right? And why do we continue to do it? Why do we continue to provide contingencies on accounts where everyone else at times is quoting minimum premiums? Because this is about protecting the unprotected. This is around solving cyber risk, right? Our objective here is to help you, the broker, truly become a risk advisor and put your client in a position where you can solve cyber, where we can truly address the risk. And in this case, the decision could have been quite different had Change Healthcare followed the contingency. Moving ahead, Tiago, let me turn it over to you.
As we mentioned before, we collect a lot of data. As Shawn mentioned before, 2.27 trillion new data points, events across all of the different types of collections that we made. However, the other part where we're really, really careful is to not overwhelm our customers. And by customers, at least for my team, I have internal customers in the underwriters, so building nice UIs with nice AI that they don't have to look at 2.27 trillion data points, but also to the customer. What that means is if you or your clients get a notification from Coalition, it matters. It has been vetted by AI. It has been vetted by humans superpowered with AI. And we will curate all of this massive amount of data for you and your client. I just wanted to take a second. As Shawn mentioned that our mission is protect the unprotected, and we're trying to solve cyber risk. In this market, yes, we still place contingencies, and of course there are other people quoting minimum premiums. My ask would be always give our CRA to the client, because that is our mission. Even if you choose not to bind with Coalition, give them the CRA, because we are telling them the entire roadmap of how hackers are going to compromise their company. And that, for us, that's our mission. That matters. So make sure you always share that security report with the client. Shawn? We also do a lot of threat intelligence validation, and we're looking at an example here. So a couple of weeks ago, a Russian threat actor group actually got hacked themselves. And what was stolen was all their internal chat logs. And you can see here at the bottom that the message is all in Russian. But what I would like to point out is, for us, this is super important, because when we place a contingency on a company and we lose it, we never know what happens, because the company goes with someone else and we don't immediately have access to loss runs or anything. So when these leaks of threat groups happen, for us, they're like gold, because we get to go look at internally how these hackers are chatting about the companies they're compromising. And here we have an example where essentially one of the Russian hackers is talking to the other and is essentially providing the credentials, J. Whitaker, Spring 2024 as the password, to this Citrix sedgwick.com/logon point tmindex.html. This is how they compromise the company. This is the same company we placed the contingency on, and we even identified the exact asset that was going to be used as well. That is the level of precision we have when doing scanning, when identifying potential issues a company might have, is at the individual asset level. Next up.
Very cool. I just think it's fun. Like, adversaries are attacking adversaries, right? And when that happens, our ability to collect that information and understand what were the technologies that were being compromised actually matters. Now, how does it matter to you? It matters in the form of pricing, right? We know, this was not too long ago, that the nature of how cyber-related risks were priced, you talked about revenue, right? Industry has always been important, and then record count, right? The industry has evolved, however, right? So today, state of the art, really, from a traditional insurance standpoint, as I highlighted earlier, we've added MFA. We understand what multi-factor authentication does to protect our clients from cyber-related risk. The scan score, kind of the external view on what's happening in the world around data, oftentimes the score gets inputted into an underwriting model. However, we know that the future, and frankly, the current state of Coalition, is to truly do this at scale, having a more complete understanding of the data and risk profile of a particular client, evaluating that data by peril, right? Because we know the risk of ransomware is very different than the risk of privacy, which is different than the risk of funds transfer fraud, media liability, right? So having the data to truly understand that at scale really matters. We are quite literally at Coalition pricing thousands of technologies on every individual risk, right? So if our pricing is too cheap, if our pricing is too expensive, there's a reason, and let's talk about it, right? Because we can give you insights to help you understand what are the technologies that are actually impacting your client. Again, no different from any other area of insurance, right? Because I can tell you a building that's constructed with metal versus a building that's constructed with sand, Those are going to have very different risk profiles, and our ability to communicate and help you explain that to your client is critical. Now, the reality is, actually, we are doing this at scale. And Tiago, let's talk about our risky tech ranking.
We're launching today a new public product. It's called Risky Tech Ranking. And what exactly is it trying to solve? Can I get next slide, Shawn? Did you get it? Cool. So this is a ranking of vendors and products that are exploited by attackers. So to give you a sense of the problem, every single month, between 2,000 to 3,000 new vulnerabilities are found in random products. However, when you actually go and study these vulnerabilities, only about 5% of them are actually used by threat actors, by hackers. You can think for a company, it can be quite overwhelming, right? You have large infrastructure, you have lots of technology. What should I patch first? And we see that many times companies spend time patching things that don't matter. It's not that the software isn't vulnerable, it's just that no hacker is going to target that type of vulnerability. So we've decided to create a ranking that looks at all the vulnerabilities that come out and chooses which ones have the highest probability of being exploited by hackers. And then we create an index based on this, essentially the total number of critical vulnerabilities plus the likelihood of them being exploited by hackers. And what this gives the customer is a prioritized list of things that they need to care for. Next slide, Shawn. Again, the purpose for the ranking is to help business make better informed decisions about what they need to prioritize. We also work a lot with MSPs that have hundreds of clients and they never know, like, what should I patch first? Which asset of my client should I patch first? All of this will help them that. On the other side, as someone that has been in cybersecurity for many years, one of the problems we've had is that there has been no one to hold us accountable in technology, meaning security vendors that develop security products, they've actually been a cause of why companies are getting compromised. If you go look at the past 2 years, what are typically called SSL VPN appliances that customers buy because they want to remotely connect to their company in a secure manner, that's actually what's getting companies compromised. So from our perspective, insurance is actually perfectly placed to hold tech vendors accountable, to make them start to care about security of their own products. And that's the initiative we're starting today. And if you want to explore the index, rtr.coalitioninc.com, it's available to all of you now, fully mobile compatible. You can explore the different vendors. If you click on a vendor, you can see the products that are on top exploitation. You can compare different vendors. All of this available to you right now. Shawn?
Super cool. We hope we've given you a glimpse of not only the importance of data in terms of the value and sustainability of our underwriting, but also how the data helps you stand out as a trusted risk advisor. This leads to not only more accurate pricing, a better and faster quoting experience, but also enables you to have the data to have more meaningful conversations with your clients. Now, what the data also tells us is that cyber insurance alone is frankly incomplete. It doesn't truly address cyber risk in its entirety. Now, this leads to pain for everyone as well, right? You, as the broker, oftentimes have an experience where, frankly, there's a gap in terms of the knowledge that may be available to you and your client around their risk profile, right? Their ability to truly manage the risk is limited. And then, as a result, the cyber risk, the cyber business can't really scale in terms of driving more revenue for your respective agencies. From the client's perspective, it leads to inefficiency and costs, right? There's this administrative burden where the individual responsible for risk in finance or legal is trying to communicate effectively with the individuals responsible for security, either within the organization or externally. And as a result, there's massive opportunities for benefits in insurance space that are actually unrealized. Now, the concept of loss control in insurance is not new, right? Loss control exists in virtually every area of insurance, whether it be kind of workplace safety programs. You have many things that happen in the property world. Companies like FM Global actively provide recommendations to their clients. Obviously, in the auto space, you have fleet programs. And so to move to the second belief around what an insurer needs to do in order to thrive in a digital future is they have to be able to unlock the combined protection of security and insurance. When this happens, everyone wins, right? Think about this. The concept of having an insurance entity not only provide security services, right, but also help a policyholder understand security services makes perfect sense, right? If a security company has security-related services and it doesn't work, they commonly just stand behind limitations of liability, right? When an insurance company providing security-related services, when the security doesn't work, the insurance company pays the claim. There's a very natural incentive alignment that occurs, right? Now, Coalition, we do know cybersecurity.
And we're thinking about it holistically. We're not just focused on the perimeter. We're building solutions for the entire security stack. So we've got collision control that gives you access to all of our external scans, but now we also have an integration feature that all of a sudden allows your clients to pull in cloud data, internal scans. We've launched Managed Detection and Response, a new service for us here at Coalition. And at the same time, we've also launched security awareness training, and we've launched it in a way where it lives inside Coalition Control, giving all of your customers a unified security experience. Because that's the thing that's important about security. We got to make the client scared. So we got to make it as smooth as possible, as clean as possible. And that's what we're trying to do here at Coalition. We're trying to make it security easy and all in a unified platform. As we mentioned before, Coalition Control is our risk management platform. And all of your policyholders get access to it, independent if it's primary or excess. Absolutely everyone that has a policy with Coalition gets access to Coalition Control. And I'm going to show you a demo of all the latest updates we have for it. Cool. So when one of your clients logs into Coalition Control, this is what they'll see. They'll see a high-level dashboard that shows them cyber health rating and inherent risk rating. As a broker, you can think of this in a really simple way. Cyber health rating is everything that is actionable by your customer. Patch this server. We found this password in the dark web. Go change this password. Go enforce MFA on your VPN. All things that the customer can take action on. Inherent risk rating is essentially the insurance factors. These are things that a customer can't just change, but it is accounted for in their underwriting. What is the revenue, number of employees, what is the industry, all of these factors. One important thing for Coalition is all the data we use to underwrite the company, we give it back to the customer. We're not trying to be some black box where the customer doesn't really understand what they can do to improve their premium or how we got to a certain premium amount. We give all of the data back to the customer in Coalition Control. There's an action plan that tells the client, hey, here are the top things you should be doing to improve your cyber health rating. And they can also look at the trend of their cyber health, including critical findings and including the size of their attack surface. And they can then start exploring the list on the left. We've launched a new feature for security checklist. We have a Coalition checklist. You can think of this as an in-depth, purely security-driven checklist that is going to guide the client to get to a really good place when it comes to security when they're looking at their roadmap. But we're also now starting to support compliance frameworks. Compliance is a big topic for us in 2025. And if you scroll down, you can see there's a lot of frameworks that we have on the roadmap that we're going to be making available in Coalition Control. Again, making security and compliance easy for the client. When they fill out a question in one of the security checklists, it auto-populates across other frameworks if the same question is being asked. The client doesn't need to answer 3 or 4 times, do you have MFA enabled? They just need to answer it once, and we'll handle making sure that we auto-populate in other frameworks where that matters. They can start to dig into security findings. And one thing that's interesting, Joshua mentioned this, we have a security copilot. Why did we build a security copilot? Because one of the important things for us at Coalition is providing top-tier support to the clients when they need help. However, there are only so many security engineers in the world, and I don't think I could get enough budget to hire them all. So we turned to AI. We essentially grabbed all of the collective security engineering knowledge that we have at Coalition, and we injected it all into a model that can help and support customers. So for example, if I pick a vulnerability, I can go into Ask Copilot, and I can ask it to tell me more about the security finding open desktop protocol, essentially remote desktop protocol, RDP. This is one of the top vulnerabilities we see hackers using. Essentially, RDP is exposed to the internet, and they brute force the login on RDP, and that's the top reason we see hackers using these days to deploy ransomware. But we also work with clients that are just a single individual, and we work with massive clients that have 1, 2, 3 IT teams and maybe 2 security teams, and we need to support them all. So one interesting thing is, as a client, you can come in here and say, oh, you're telling me to enable NLA, but I don't know how to do that. Can you give me step-by-step instructions for Windows Server 2022? And what's going to happen is this AI is going to grab all of the context of the client. It's going to understand what is the technology stack that they have. It's going to go out on the internet, grab all the documentation for Windows Server 2022, and it's going to give the client the exact instructions, step by step, on how to enable this security control. The coolest thing about all of this is we can keep going. We can say, I have a Fortinet firewall. Give me step-by-step instructions how to take the RDP off of the internet. Oh, and by the way, I don't actually speak English. I only speak Japanese, or I only speak Farsi, or I only speak Portuguese. Can you tell me this in my language? Because Coalition is thinking about scaling security engineering, not just for the US, but all of our international markets as well. As I mentioned before, we wanted a unified experience, so the client gets access to SAT directly in control, but also our MDR service. The entire experience happens in a single place. The client doesn't need to log in, log out in different platforms. They can just come in here, and they can see all the alerts that our MDR team detected, all the actions that they took, all in a single unified experience. The client can do TPRM, third-party monitoring, directly in Coalition control, and at Coalition, we like to experiment a little bit. So we've been experimenting with a new way of potentially accelerating how we can stop FTF attacks. And as you saw mentioned earlier, that's a 72-hour window. 72-hour window gives us a really high recovery rate. So what did we decide to do about it? If you're a client in the US, you can connect your bank account to Coalition control. We get read-only access to the transaction log of your bank account. And if we see you transacting with a vendor, you have it in the past, or an abnormal volume of dollars being sent from one account to the other, we immediately send you an email and say, hey, we think we're seeing a potentially fraudulent transfer on your account. Was this you? And if the client replies and says, no, this is not me, we can immediately then contact our claims team and contact you as the broker and start the clawback process. Because again, the earlier we know about it, the higher our probability of recovery as well. And again, all of this being done in a single platform. There's a lot more in here, and you all now have access to Coalition control in your broker dashboard, so I welcome you all to explore this. And our product team is here today, and I know they would love to hear feedback and potentially new features that you think your clients would be interested in as well. Shawn?
Thank you. One thing I love about control is any attempt your client has to increase their data, their prospective integrations, et cetera, within control, that can only positively impact underwriting, right? If your client shares more data with Coalition via control, there's only a positive impact there.
One of the things we hear about a lot is how insurtechs are building these platforms and no one really uses them. This is the number that shows that that's not true. In the lifetime of control, we've had 113,000 plus vulnerabilities being fixed by our clients. And I can promise you, again, critical vulnerabilities are only considered a critical at Coalition if we're seeing a ransomware group using them. So this is a lot of claims avoided, a lot of your clients saved from the worst day of their business lives. As we announced before, you know I'll have access to collision control directly in your broker dashboard. And we've launched security awareness training directly in collision control, really accessible in terms of pricing as well. We see a lot of security awareness training solutions out there that are super expensive. Again, we are building for the small guy, for the big guy, but we're always trying to find the right price point because the security protection that comes with these services is much more important for us. Managed detection and response, we have an amazing MDR team using all of the latest tools that they can detect. They can make sure that companies are not getting ransomed, and all of it happens in collision control as well. Shawn?
You know, it's Labor Day weekend, everybody's gone. We have one at-home employee, and she uses a specific type of VPN. She made mention that it wasn't working. I come in the next day, and I can't log into my computer. Everyone's calling me, they can't log into theirs. And I'm like, okay, there's more than meets the eye with this. So I call our service provider who helps us out. He gets in, he starts looking around, and he's like, you have ransomware. And then now everything goes down. A lot of our management systems that were automated were all down. Couldn't do payroll, we couldn't do budget stuff. We can't get students to sync with their course data. We didn't lose money, we lost education. The kids definitely start falling behind. It's a big deal. Within 2 hours, we were on the phone with the Coalition Incident Response Team. Boom, right from the get-go, we were boots on the ground, making progress, bringing our system back to where it could be operational again. So we got all the Coalition stuff online, and I said, we have networks bigger than most corporate companies. We have more users than any business in our county. So I need someone I can call and talk to. And the recovery was so helpful. It was super easy to be able to choose Coalition Security. We moved from incident response over to Coalition Managed Detection and Response. This system allowed us to have every computer monitored and every endpoint for any suspicious activity that could have happened. And Coalition Security was there 24/7 to monitor it. It's so comforting to know that someone is watching our system and we don't have to worry about something happening in the middle of the night or on a holiday or any time of the week. For example, we had a recent incident that said, your device is being observed, but with Coalition, we confirmed it was all safe. So that's another incident that someone's in the corner that can help us. You know what I mean? I don't want the Swiss Army knife of security. I want a team of experts to know that no matter what it is, we're gonna find out how it happened, we're gonna prevent it from happening, and then we're gonna tell you how to protect against it. From the incident response to notification to the monitoring, you can definitely tell that they have done this before. Everything has been super smooth. Coalition did an amazing job.
As it not only addresses like what was happening from a security perspective, but the line in there, what we were losing was education, right? We know what a cyber event, a cyber attack can actually, the impact it can have on an organization, particularly a school district. Joshua highlighted this before. For any of you within the Coalition platform, when you are quoting, your ability to offer MDR, security awareness training, these security services available to your client is real. It's readily available today, and it does come with benefits, right? So when you're offering security awareness training, we will automatically enhance your FTF limit by an additional $50,000. If you're using Coalition's MDR service, you'll be, again, automatically provided a premium credit of up to 12.5%. And there's a variety of additional benefits for security services that are being offered on our insurance product. The objective here is how do we maximize coverage and minimize the risk with a unified approach? How do we truly stand out as a risk advisor, providing them every opportunity to reduce claims and enhance their insurance offering? Coalition Security enables you, empowers you to be better risk advisors. Now, when we think about the impact of claims on Coalition. This is our data from 2024, right? The composition of all claims that we had, 30% of them were business email compromise. Obviously, many of those lead to funds transfer fraud occurring. And then ransomware continues to be a problem. Security is important given the evolving claims environment. Now, one belief that we have is the reach and impact of cyber risk will continue to explode. And let me take a minute to describe this slide a little bit, right? So at Coalition, through Tiago's efforts, right, and his team, we collect a lot of the information that's occurring around the web as respects to adversarial activity. And adversaries are braggadocious, if you will, right? They commonly will boast about their wins, right? Who are they able to exploit? And we track all of that activity. So in 2021, we began to create an index in the first quarter of the amount of ransomware activity that we saw in that first quarter of 2021. And what this slide is demonstrating is the percentage change of that activity from adversaries as it pertains to ransomware, right? So let's fast forward to Q4 2024, the very last bar. The blue bar demonstrates that the amount of activity we saw across the world from adversaries pertaining to ransomware was literally double the amount of ransomware activity that occurred in the first quarter of 2021. That's what happened in Q4. So when we're talking about cyber risk exploding, it is real. That is what's happening, right? Now, what the yellow bar represents is Coalition's ransomware activity pertaining to that same time period. So although we saw the industry increase by 100%, Coalition's ransomware decrease by 52%, right? So then what we do is we go back and we look, hey, all the ransomware events that we see occurring around the world, how much of this have we actually seen in terms of receiving a submission, right? So if XYZ company got hit by ransomware and we see that, did we see that submission? And by the way, when we saw that submission, did we actually apply a contingency or did we decline it? Did we write it, right? Did that contingency or decline actually lead to the company being ransomed? So this is 2024 data, right? 614 times businesses were affected after Coalition saw their contingency, saw their risk, right? And they did not address it. If you just look at our average kind of ransomware experience and you do the math, that resulted in $307 million of ransomware-related losses that we avoided, right? And we handed to these other companies, right? The Proactives and Adaptives of the world, right? They were the ones that wrote these, right? This is material, and this is, again, why contingencies are really important. So our next belief is insurers need to respond. They have to address the claims environment because it's accelerating at a pace never before as respects to digital risk. Now, we invite you to give your clients the Coalition advantage around claims, right? At Coalition, we have an integrated team. We utilize in a very unified fashion the incident response team of Coalition as well as the claims team. Joshua highlighted it. This is crazy to say even, but our average response time is 5 minutes, right? So when your client calls in and says, hey, I got something going on, you receive a response within 5 minutes. And there's a variety of unique capabilities that come as a result of the integration and the 5 minutes, right? Whether it be clawbacks, ransomware negotiation. We negotiated 60% of the ransomware. We negotiated ransomware on average 60% down in 2024. We commonly provide interim business interruption payments in the event of BI occurring. Pre-claims assistance, a variety of things. In fact, many of you are aware, Coalition, we have clawed back over $100 million of funds that have been fraudulently transferred for our clients, right? This is crazy to think about, $100 million. First of all, those would have been claims for anyone else. But second of all, I would highlight to you that commonly, this is a coverage that is sublimited, right? We had one recent one recent funds transfer fraud event where the client had a $250,000 limit and Coalition recovered $9 million, right? It had nothing to do with insurance, right? We've had experiences where we've retracted monies where the client actually didn't even buy FTF. They were buying a contract-only policy, right? What's important to know, as we've highlighted earlier, is when you have a funds transfer fraud-related event, notify Coalition quickly. Allow that 5-minute response time to recover the funds. Dylan highlighted this earlier. Our claims report is going to release here shortly. But frankly, spoiler alert, active insurance is working. Coalition, our claims frequency has decreased as the industry has had their challenges. Many of you are aware, Coalition, we started off writing accounts $250 million in revenue and below, and we've only increased up to $5 billion at the moment. And by the way, that's not gonna stay the same. That will change as well. But even as our revenue thresholds have increased, our severity has remained flat. But the most important statistic Joshua highlighted, 73% fewer claims according to NIC data, right? When we think about response, having a fast response leads to fewer claims, and most importantly for us both, it leads to happy clients. This is wrapping up the third bullet. Response matters. Insurers have to be able to respond to cyber-related incidents in an environment that is ever-changing.
For a lawyer that has, private personal information on their clients, including dates of birth, social security numbers, it was the worst feeling in the world that there's some bad actors have gotten a hold of my system. If I had been letting it run all day long, I probably would now be in the clutches of some evil empire. It all started innocently enough. I invested in a security system sold as a bundle, and I was having a lot of difficulty getting them to sync together. And I was searching for information pertaining to the product, and I thought there was a help video, and that's when bad actors' information appeared. And they said they could sure help me, everything like that, but they needed access to my computer. They told me that my computer system had been infected, and so I paid for some kind of system that these guys put on my computer to make all that go away. On Monday, I turned everything back on, and a little box showed up at the bottom of my computer, which was new, and it looked like it was running some sort of code or moving fairly quickly. So that's when I called Coalition. They had me shut everything down, and they said they would send someone out to come help me. The fact that they were willing to send somebody here, was a huge relief for me. The analyst was excellent. She texted me, she emailed me, she gave me a phone call, and she was very much on top of it. She set up a system where it spent some real time going through my system and putting on whatever needed to do to investigate what the problems were. From that perspective, rapid response was exceptional. Other insurance companies tend to deflect, say somebody else's fault, this kind of thing. So the peace of mind I get now knowing that I have Coalition behind me in the event that anything like this were to come in the future gives me a great sense of peace. It really put the active in active insurance.
Very cool. I had this vision of Mr. Robert Jones driving up in this bright pink car, solving his clients' issues. Super cool. All right. So as we think about kind of how to solve claims, right? I want to take, we're going to go ahead. I want to take a minute and just transition and talk a little bit about some of the risks that companies are facing today and wrap up with our fourth and final belief, right? AI plays a meaningful part of everyone's future. Deepfakes continue to kind of trouble companies as they worry about what happens in the media. Government regulation, certainly cryptocurrencies. Digital risks are evolving very quickly, and it's critical that companies, our clients, have coverage that meets the needs of these ever-changing threats in mind. So our final belief, as Coalition enters this scenario, is that we have to have coverage that evolves for the cutting-edge risks of today. Now, active insurance, the data, the services, loss ratio, it enables us to provide a better policy. You would only expect that the company that has the most data, the most services, the greatest ability to mitigate risk would also provide you the best policy to meet the needs of your clients. So we will continue to innovate as we consider coverage. And despite everything that we described to you today, we have not lost sight of the fact that our most important product, the most critical component of active insurance, is the policy. The contract must perform. So there's lots of things that we considered when we thought about our active cyber policy, right? One, we wanted to bring more innovation to the market. We want to simplify the structure. These policies can appear complex. They're legal language, like 20 plus pages, et cetera. We want to have modernized language for today's digital, really, economy. And we wanted to make it easier for you to the broker with the digital-first design. So we highlighted a few coverages in the past, and I want to go through these very quickly. The first one is vanishing retention, right? What we wanted to do is put the policy in a position where we could reward security-conscious policyholders. When policyholders were making the right decisions around improving the risk profile, let's give them material benefit. So envision a day, Coalition policyholders today, Joshua said, we're doing this retroactively a year. So 2 years from today, your policyholder has no retention, no deductible, right? And when they have a cyber-related event, they recognize that that cash is available to them to do what's important for their business and have Coalition take on the burden of the risk, right? Because of our efforts around FTF and around clawing back funds that have been fraudulently transferred, we want to incentivize customers to tell us earlier, right? We know that if you tell us within 72 hours, there's a high likelihood that we can recover the funds. Well, that's great because that policy limit continues to be available for your client. And then finally, we want to have the ability to reinstate policy limits for your client. As a claim occurs, as frequency increases, as companies are more concerned, hey, I just got through the cyber event, I'm trying to implement MDR, I'm trying to do all these things, I'm still worried that limit can be available to them. And this is just the beginning, right? There's a variety of improvements that we're making to this policy. This policy will be available a week from today. Now, any of you brokers, we've done our best to inform many of your cyber leaders around the policy language. However, note that on all renewals, we will be applying a liberalization clause, which will give you all of the benefits of our prior policy, despite the fact that we believe our new policy is only broader. But it gives you the comfort that the liberalization clause will be there in the event of a claim. Whether the language exists on our prior policy or our new policy, the contract will perform, all right? So that will begin 1 week from today. This is the broadest form we have ever provided, and I believe it to be the broadest form in the market today. The next generation of cyber insurance, it is here, right? We have market-leading coverage. We have aligned endorsements and coverages that are aligned to the risk, to the security that your client is there, and it is tailored for our ever-growing needs. As you think about the future, right? To thrive in this digital future, it is critical that the foundation is data. We have to better understand a client's risk. We have to be able to help them with data, truly understand and adjust their risk. We have to be able to unlock the protections associated with security and insurance. We have to be able to respond to claims faster with greater sophistication and data. And finally, we have to have coverage there for you. Now, let me wrap up with this slide. You've elected to come and participate in what I will believe today to be the most innovative cyber conference in history. You've also elected to participate in the most pervasive risk in society today. You provide not only the industry's most dynamic product, but also the product that generates the largest amount of growth, the largest opportunity for revenue. Let me conclude by saying this is the absolute best that Coalition has ever been, but it is the worst you will ever see. We are updating our technology every day. We're deploying code. We're doing everything impossible to improve upon what you have seen today. Thank you for joining us in this mission and to build the future with us.